Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Master of Ceremonies, John Boggs.
Good morning to you all, and happy Tuesday morning. I can tell that the networking cocktail last night worked because some people are still sleeping off their networking. We really think that we've got a good start to the IGHC this year. We've got lots of interesting topics. We've had contacts with many fascinating people in the lunches, at the tables, at the events, and it's really fun to connect with people from the air transport world involved with ground handling. If I look back at yesterday, we started the morning with remarks from the CEO of Iberia, the head of airports for AENA, and a senior executive from IATA. We heard a great overview of the opportunities and challenges for the ramp of the future. This future environment will be autonomous, connected, and optimized. The need for innovation in ground operations was a theme from all three of those executives, and the presentation of the finalists for the IGHC Innovator 2019 showed this concept in action. Remember, you have until 1500 hours this afternoon to cast your vote for your favorite in the competition. After lunch, we had an innovative speed networking session, which was a different way for airlines and ground handlers to make that initial contact. I know that it was the first time we'd done it. We're kind of feeling our way around on it, but overall it was pretty successful, and I'm sure that it'll be refined for future years to make that even more effective for the participants. We had smaller workshops in the afternoon that provided the opportunity to delve down into specific subjects. One of these was on sustainable ramp. They discussed the new technology and practices in low emissions ramp operations, as well as the prospects for collaboration across the airport system, ground handlers, airlines, airports. Employee engagement was highlighted as a way to facilitate the best sustainability practices. Also covered were the coordination of response to humanitarian disaster relief and industry efforts to reduce illegal wildlife traffic via the air transport system. Another workshop was on the future of the passenger process. The overall conclusion was that a seamless end-to-end process for passengers is needed. However, there's really no one-size-fits-all process that will work for the various airports around the globe. Different situations, different environment, different requirements. Adaptation will be needed for each. The good news about this is that passenger processes will allow our entire industry to be more predictive and adaptive rather than simply reactive as we are today. We ended with our networking over drinks in the cocktail with the exhibitors, and it was a pretty good day, I think, overall. Today, we have another day that will be filled with opportunities for learning about topics as well as meeting people. We're going to spend less time in this room. We'll only be in here for one session until mid-morning, and much more time in workshops and connecting and company-to-company meetings, the real heart of what the IGHC does, connecting airlines and ground handlers together one-on-one to do business. And so we're hoping that this format will facilitate that. Today, the entire day, we're going to have 2 breaks and lunch, and it's sponsored by Celebi, and we want to thank them for being our sponsor for this. To get into the real program now, I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Patrick Key from the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA. And so, Patrick, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you today and speak at this very important event, and I would like to thank IATA for giving me the opportunity. What is EASA? I don't know if you know about us, but we are indeed the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. And we were created in 2004. And we have two major roles in Europe. The first one is that we certify all European products. That means the Airbuses and Dassault and Rolls-Royce engines and so on and so forth. And the second one is that we are drafting all the rules which are applied in aviation. I will go more in some details on this, but it's two roles, certification of products and drafting rules, that then we check on how they are being implemented by the industry and by the member states. Okay? So we are not replacing the national authorities. We are making sure that all the national authorities in Europe have the same set of rules and that they apply the rules according to the law. Okay? Since September of last year, a new EASA was born. Because, as I said earlier, we were created in 2004. And after 15 years of existence almost, basically the legislators thought that it would be good to review the foundation of EASA and look at what works and what could be done better. I won't go too much into details, but let me say that with this new founding regulation, the scope of activity of EASA has increased. In particular to cover state aircraft and state aircraft operations. It builds also a stronger cooperation and clearer roles between the agency and the member states' regulatory authorities in order to have a more consistent, harmonized system in Europe. It introduces the new fundamental notion of European oversight for any kind of organization. So, today, for instance, an airline is a national airline. It has an AOC, which is based in one country. Tomorrow, or with this new regulation, an airline can become a European operator in which, for which basically the oversight is going to be performed by EASA. But it's also true for maintenance organizations. It's true for training organizations, air navigation service providers, and so on and so forth. We were also tasked to deal with drones, with new technologies, with security, and finally ground handling. And of course, I'm going to spend a bit more time on ground handling. I have to say that I was a bit puzzled when we started the discussions with the member states on this topic, ground handling. And some member states, I even have the names, were considering that there was no safety element in ground handling and that therefore there was no need for EASA to step in. I don't know if you would agree with that. There is no safety element in ground handling, but for us, the picture is quite different. Just a bit of data. In the last 10 years, and I'm just speaking about Europe, we had 7 fatal accidents, 475 non-fatal accidents, 90 serious incidents involving ground handling. As a result, there were 17 fatalities and 36 serious injuries. The number of safety occurrences, which are more minor incidents but still are worth mentioning because they are reported, are in the thousands. And when we look at the top 10 contributors for safety incidents, you have number 1, baggage and cargo loading, number 2, the coordination and control of turnarounds, number 3, dangerous goods handling and lithium batteries handling, number 4, control of passengers on the apron, number 5, parking and positioning of the aircraft, 6, fueling operations, 7, operations on vehicles, pushback and operation on air bridges. All those topics have seen a number of incidents or accidents in the last 10 years. And of course, those safety incidents have an impact on costs and efficiency since they may have an impact on the availability of the aircraft for the flights. So our new founding regulation gives us a mandate to deal with ground handling. But then what are we going to do with ground handling? The traditional way of working on it in EASA would have been, my device is not working anymore. So I may need to improvise. No, the traditional way of handling this in EASA would have been to start immediately in September to work on new regulations. And we would have already a rulemaking group with 4 years, regulatory activity, which would result in a very thick amount of regulations that would be ready in 2023, 2024. Is it what we need? Is it what you need? I don't know. And what we decided to do for the ground handling, since this is a new topic for activity for us, was that we should listen to the community, to the stakeholders. And in order to do that, what we did was basically to interview 47 organizations, among which national authorities, ground handling service providers, airlines, airport operators, and associations, so airline associations, also staff representatives, in order to get as much as possible a picture of what would be needed. And in order to work through all those interviews, what we did was basically to task a team of experts coming from the industry to help us work on a ground handling roadmap that we call. And let me give you some ideas about what we did for this. Basically, our interviews, our survey, identified 5 areas on which there would need to be an action from EASA. Not necessarily new rules, potentially standards, potentially what we call safety promotion, which is just information and communication, and other types of actions. I'm going to go through those 5 areas briefly. The first area is safety management systems. In some countries, it is already mandatory for ground handlers to have a safety management system. What we would like to do is to implement a proportionate, that means taking into account the capability and the size of the ground handling service providers, but mandatory implementation of SMS, safety management systems. And by the way, we would like also to connect the different safety management systems of the actors on the platform. So airlines, airport operator, and ground handling service provider, air traffic control as well, in order to have the best flow of information among actors on safety. The second area that we would like to work on is operational standards. There are quite a few standards that you are using already today, and we would like to make use and refer to those standards, typically ISAGO or ISBAO. We would also like to propose some flexibility to deviate from those standards because not all of them are strictly applicable everywhere. So we will heavily rely on the industry standards, on the best practices to give examples, benchmark on how we want to operate. Area number 3, training. We would like to propose the development of standard minimum training elements based, again, on industry standards and including practical training and examination on equipment. Common training standards should promote establishing a career path for ground handlers staff and introduce individual training records as an attestation of competence. There was a lot of discussion with staff associations and unions who wanted basically to create licenses and things like that. No, we do not want to create a license for ground handling agents, but we believe that there is a need to recognize their competence and therefore that we can use the training records as an attestation of competence. For equipment, it was mentioned by Joe earlier, we would like to cater for the introduction of new technologies for training of the agents, but also for automation, autonomy, for loading of the aircraft, for instance. We are proposing also to have high-level requirements for equipment management and maintenance based on the recommendations of the equipment manufacturers, and we would have provision for equipment pooling at a platform. And the last but not the least area which was identified and necessitating some action from our side is to look at the staff turnover, which is, we believe, a key challenge for the industry. Our proposal would be to launch actions on the modernization of equipment, the definition of career paths to become more attractive to workers, and to issue, as I said earlier, training attestations to encourage workers to pursue a career in ground handling and facilitate staff mobility. In terms of oversight, our new founding regulation foresees a declaration system, so not a certification. That means that basically ground handling service providers will declare that they are compliant with the regulations. And we foresee to have a cooperative oversight between the member states in order to make sure that if, for those of you, you are compliant in one country, then this compliance is recognized by the other countries. All those 5 items were developed in concept papers which form the basis of a ground handling roadmap which was presented to the community in March of this year. This roadmap details a total of 42 lines of actions for which the type of activities needed are described. It can be new rules, it can be standards, it can be safety promotion. And we are now starting to implement the roadmap, and we will still rely on this notion of using small groups of experts to draft the rules where necessary or to draft the material that is necessary in all the different actions. And we will, on regular occasions, consult the wider community. With all this, I believe we should start to have tangible results in the course of 2020-2021. That's the goal that we have. Ladies and gentlemen, I count on your support in order to make sure that all these actions result in safer operations at airports. I hope that I could convey the message to you that we are not trying to create additional burden for you, but that we want to build on best practices and industry standards and aim for a proportional and flexible approach. I'm certain that with the contribution of all, like it has been done so far, and the willingness of all parties to be constructive, we'll have an example of a field where EU action is resulting in a real gain for our citizens. Thank you very much for your attention and have a great day. Thank you.
Patrick, thank you very much. It's great to hear the endorsement of standardization and working together. A lot of what we're talking about today will follow along out of your ideas. Speaking of standardization to achieve safety, our next topic is ISAGO, IATA's Safety Audit for Ground Operations. It's a very important industry initiative which has been revised to even better suit the needs of everybody involved. Paul Fleming is going to talk about these changes and what they mean to us. Paul?
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to take, first of all, a few moments just to introduce myself, because probably a new name, a new face. I certainly, when I look around the room, I don't see many people that I recognize. In fact, when I looked through the list of participants, some 900 or so, I think I saw 5 names that I recognized. And only one of those persons I actually probably know, Andrew, for instance. So my background is not in ground handling, per se. So when I came into IATA about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, it was quite an eye-opener. I didn't realize how complex ground handling is, how complex your job is, how complex it is to try and create something like ISAGO to cater for not just your needs, but for the airline's needs and for the industry needs. So when I came into IATA, that was part of my role, was to look at ISAGO and say, well, okay, what does it need to do to meet the demands of the future and to cater for everyone's needs and produce benefits? It was quite a challenge. I didn't do it alone. There is now, under myself, there's a team, a very small team in IATA of 6 people. That's all we have. I have one of the team here today, and I'd like to recognize Berth Lawson, if you'll stand up. Berth is the dean of ISAGO at the moment. She is the longest serving person in the team, and she is the go-to person, certainly for me. If I need to know anything, she's got the answers. As you can see, she's a lady as well. So often she gets referred to as Mr. Lawson, or just Lawson. But nevertheless, whatever happens, whatever comes her way, she answers the questions. Okay, that's about me, a little bit anyway. What I'd like to do is take you through a few slides, some information on what's happening in my world, and hopefully what can happen in your world too as well. So, just like EASA, we went through a major review. And in September 2017, we launched the new program. It was a major change, for not just for us, but for the ground handlers too that were subject to the audits. And we have now completed 16 months or so of the new model. These are the results from last year. We conducted the same number, or roughly the same number of audits as we had in the previous 2 or 3 years. We didn't expect any drop. We didn't get any drop in interest. In fact, we had more interest. We just couldn't cater for the interest. We couldn't do more because we'd had to set up the framework. We had to set up the audit teams. We had to set up various processes to make it work. We didn't quite estimate the amount of work that was given to 6 people to undertake. However, we did it. We did 245 audits last year. Quite a remarkable thing to do, in my view. Part of the way that we did it, and one of the major changes that we incorporated, was the way that the auditors were contracted. Gone was the pool method, where we used and relied upon the airlines to provide the auditors. We now have our own pool of auditors that are selected, they are trained and qualified by IATA. So we had to establish all the mechanism to do that, and the training regimes and everything else. We have what's now known as the COPA. It's the IATA Charter of Professional Auditors. And at this time, we have roughly about 70 auditors in that charter at our disposal. They are located around the world, and they are available at most times to conduct audits. By the end of this year, we hope to have nearly 100, and there are still some that are yet to be processed through our application stages. So things are looking a lot better. We are now on the sort of, you look at the audits for 2020. We'll start to process them in August of this year. And we are in better shape to deliver. Now, the title of this presentation is that, well, it uses the words game changer. So why is ISAGO a game changer? Well, perhaps this next slide will demonstrate it. The number of findings that we raised, or the auditors raised, in those 245 audits last year increased from an average of 2 or 3 per audit to nearly 20. There are a total of nearly 5,000 at the end of the day findings. Now, why was that? It was partly down to the fact that in the new program, we focus on the management of operations. We go to the corporate headquarters of the organization and say, tell us, show us, demonstrate to us what management and oversight capabilities you have for the operations that you conduct throughout your network. We want to see how you manage safety, security, quality, all the other good management terms at your stations. Some, obviously, ground service providers were not prepared for that. That's not a bad thing, because now they are. Because to get an ISAGO registration, within 6 months of doing the audit, you have to be prepared. You have to have the management systems in place. You have to be in conformity with the standards. The other reason why perhaps we got more findings is because of the quality of the auditing. That charter of professional auditors, our auditors now are, we believe, better. Simple as that. They go into the standards in more depth. They go into the seeking of evidence in more thoroughly, and they produce a better audit. We used to talk about 0 findings. That seems to be a thing of the past, certainly in ISAGO. It might come back again later, because obviously we don't want to continue with this sort of trend, thinking that there's ground handlers out there that don't conform to the standards, and eventually I guess that number will come down. I hope it does. But at the moment, what we're doing is we're doing a much more thorough audit than we did in the past. The other reason is that we are introducing standards. It's not just the ISAGO standards as well. We are tying up with our colleagues in other parts of IATA that produce standards such as the IGOM and the Cargo Handling Manual and all the regulations that go with cargo too as well. We're aligning ourselves, trying to create a much more stronger, much more durable and robust set of standards, and then the audits and practices to check on the conformity of those standards in implementation. That's what the new ISAGO is all about. And I think the results themselves, certainly so far, justify why we can say it's been a game changer. As it stands, we have 186 ground service providers that are registered. They operate at 311 stations at 210 airports around the world. Now, this was as of 7th of May. The numbers change as we do the audits, as the audits come to completion, as they're closed. The numbers are also changing as well because of the way that the model works. Remember I said that we focus on the corporate side? Well, that means now that the number of registered GSPs equals the number of GSPs. We register you as a corporation, as an organization. We will then do an audit at one of your stations, and that station will be accredited to your registration. So the numbers are changing slightly. Before, whenever you've completed an audit, you were registered. Now that no longer takes place. However, we are still wishing to do as many audits as we can. The more stations that you get accredited, the more that you'll get recognition. And I'd like to show you in a minute how that recognition can be of benefit. One of the major aims of ISAGO, though, is still to help the airlines, to assist the airlines in their oversight of outsourced activities. We have currently 16 airlines that have gained, sorry, I do apologize. It's now 17. 17 airlines that subscribe to get ISAGO reports. There are ISAGO members. Now, okay, that's a rather disappointing number. We admit that. But there's probably a good reason why airlines aren't flocking to our desk and saying, sign me up. And that's probably because of a number of reasons. Maybe it's because they're waiting to see what happens with ISAGO. Maybe they're waiting to see better reasoning for joining. Maybe they want to see some other change occur. But we are now beginning to see a little bit more interest in ISAGO from the airlines. I think certainly from the results that we achieved last year, they're starting to stand up and take notice. And the other reason is because of this. We have a new ISAGO registry. I like this. I think this is a really neat and useful tool. What it is a graphical interface online which shows you where ground service providers are located within the world or within your network. If I think from an airline point of view, I can say, I can plug in, I can ask to see where the GSPs are. I can also see their ISAGO status. I can see which disciplines have been audited. I can also go into more detail. I can also see, or I can download, a copy of the audit report. I can also see other information, such as the alignment between their headquarters and their station in terms of conformity of the GOSARPs. I can also see, certainly soon, their status of implementation of the IGOM. And we can build on this. We can put a lot more information on this online tool. It looks very promising. And certainly, it's something that we can develop in a bigger way. Like most things, though, it doesn't come free of charge. You have to become an ISAGO member to get access to it. So what happens this year? Well, we have roughly the same number of audits to do. We originally had 300. That's now going to drop slightly because of various circumstances. But more importantly, though, I want you to focus on the fact that we have 50 new locations. We see some shift in the ground service providers. They are judging where best to spend their money on ISAGO. So they're saying, well, I won't do this station, I'll do this station. I will not do the station this year, I'll do it next year. That's their choice. Entirely up to them, for whatever reason they decide to do it. The other thing that is high on my agenda this year is a request from the Board of Governors, the IATA Board of Governors, to look at a potential mandate of ISAGO. Whoa, what does that mean? Well, at the moment I can't tell you, because we're still exploring the options, exploring the ideas. In fact, the Board of Governors have asked us just to do that at this moment in time. what does a mandate look like? What will it involve? Well, the only thing I can tell you at this moment in time is it will be very, very difficult to do. Because we predict from our information that there are roughly around about 11,000 ground service providers out there in the world. We couldn't possibly do an audit of 11,000 service providers. So that's why we need to be a bit more out-of-the-box thinking, maybe use a bit more innovation, but certainly we need to have a collaborative approach. We need to do that anyway, regardless of a mandate. We need to think of new ways of improving the audits, and we're open to ideas. We need to keep aware of changes in the industry too, and that because it's not just new technology, it's also new methods of working. To help us, we have embarked upon a major project in IATA called digital transformation. Collecting data, lots of data, and using it, analyzing it, and producing results, information that will give us a better idea of what we need to do. That information is also useful, of course, to the industry as well. They can see for themselves what they need to do and how we can help them. It goes back as well to the ISAGO registry. We can build upon that as well, provide much more useful information on not just the way that the world shapes up as far as standardization of ground services, but also IGOM status and also ISAGO status as well. So the future looks quite bright in a way. It looks very challenging. I've certainly got my orders to try and make a difference, and I hope to be able to make that difference with you guys, and that because it's not something that IATA wants to do alone. So that's the message that I'd like to bring today. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to spend 10 minutes up here, and I wish you all a very pleasant day. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Our next topic is ISAGO, IATA's Safety Audit for Ground Operations. I'm sorry, it's not our next topic. I know, no. I enjoyed it so much I wanted to hear it one more time. Our final topic for today concerns air cargo. Specifically, how do we speed up the movement of air freight on the ground, not in the air? We have a panel that's going to discuss the issues as well as the solutions. The moderator of our panel is Michael White of Cargo Network Services, CNS, which is an IATA company. Michael, I'd like to invite you and the panel members to come up here on the stage now. Thank you.
Buenos días, damas y caballeros. Mi nombre es Miguel Blanco. No, it's not going to be more Spanish because I work in Miami, so I have to learn a little bit of Spanish working in Miami. So yes, my name is very universal, Miguel Blanco, Michel Blanche, wherever you want to use my name. But as John mentioned, I'm with CNS, and I'm based out of Washington, D.C. And I handle most of the cargo issues for IATA in the United States. And we also handle one of the largest CAS operations between airlines and forwarders. So it's a great pleasure to be here today. We're going to talk about the sexy part of cargo being part of the airline business, the sexy business, air cargo. So How many of you are involved with air cargo? Hold up your hands if you're involved with air cargo. Aren't the rest of you involved with air cargo? Do you have a cell phone? You have a computer? You were involved with air cargo. How did it get there? This is why we have what we call the need for speed. And this part of the business we're going to talk about today is that portion that we get it on the air, we move it at almost supersonic speed, but when it gets to the ground, those are where we go subsonic, way down, and sometimes cargo sits a little bit. But we have issues, but we have a great panel today. I want to start on this side, and so would you stand up, and would you stand up? Now, how many of them know where they're from? Everybody in the Netherlands must be at least this tall or higher because there's something about the water. But thank you very much for showing. Everybody I've ever worked with, particularly at KLM, are always this tall. So it's indeed a pleasure to have them here today. But let me start from left, and I'll talk about Gerten Holzmann, who's the managing director of the Düsseldorf Airport in Germany. He is the managing director of the airport and handles approximately 40 airlines. Over 121,000 tons of cargo moved through in 2017, 190 FTEs in physical document handling, head of cargo business development in Cologne at one time, formerly with KLM. He has no experience whatsoever. And next is Eduardo Del Rego. Also, he's from Miami. He's with Pay Cargo. He's the CEO. And Pay Cargo is a company that CNS we've been involved with this year in trying to reduce some of the ancillary charges and trying to reduce the processes. But he's had a career also for quite some time in the ocean side of the business. Started with Crowley many years ago, moved into steamship lines, involved with logistics, ports, and over the last few years, he is one of the managing partners and the CEO of Pay Cargo based in Miami. And then my good friend Lothar Muller. Lothar and I used to work together in what is Cargo IQ, was Cargo 2000. We were both regional directors on the cargo quality side of the things. But Lothar is the director of AvSec and governance for DB Schenker. He's also based in Germany. He spent a whole lifetime all over the world, knows a little bit about cargo. I
have a cell phone, yeah.
Yeah, you have a cell phone?
Yep.
Right. How's your shipment doing on Amazon, or is it Alibaba? No. But no, he's been involved with a lot of things on the securities front and is a wealth of knowledge. And then last but not least, we have Ben Radstack, who's from Schiphol. He's with Air Cargo Netherlands. Ben has studied physics and chemistry, my worst two subjects in high school. That's why I went to business instead. But he has received marketing degrees. He's had 10 years of marketing research consultancy. And in 2003, he became the managing director of Air Cargo Netherlands, whose main goal in this industry association is a smarter way of moving together in the cargo chain in the Netherlands and in general in Schiphol. So welcome to the panel. We're going to start off, though I wanted to start off just a little bit about the groundwork of where we are today on things. If we take a look at the air cargo business, it's growing dramatically. Your phones, everything you use, e-commerce is in everybody's life. And if you have not ordered online and wondered where your shipment was, you're one of the few, because my wife loves to buy things online. I like to buy things online, and I want to know where they were. And with some of the new platforms, I want to know, and I want to have it delivered today, not just tomorrow. But in some areas, like I live in the Washington, D.C. area, if I order something by 11 a.m., it's going to be in my office or my home by 5 p.m. Or now, they'll even put it in the trunk of my car for me. So those are the things of the future that we have to live with. But one of the things as you take a look at what air cargo is doing is, I want to quote from Brendan Sullivan, who's IATA's head of e-commerce. Is he still here? I saw him walk out. There he is. So I'm going to quote from you. In the e-commerce world, shippers and consumers want transparency on their package. They want predictability of the delivery times, and they want speed. So we're all about speed. So we're going to have a conversation, no PowerPoints for you. It's going to be an actual conversation. And I'm going to talk and I'm going to ask each one, and I'll start with you. What is the one thing, or your perspective, that why cargo is so slow? What are the issues that are causing it? In some cases, some believe it's not moving fast enough.
It is not one, it is manifold, but first of all, to the audience who are not dealing with air cargo, more than 50% of all air cargo is flown in passenger aircraft. And I think the tendency with the development of e-commerce is only growing. 6 days air cargo is still on its way, and that is already for 40 years. I started in the air freight business in 1977, and it was 6 days, and today it is still 6 days. And to my humble point of view, it is boiling down to communication, transportation, and we all have all devices. Everything is in our hands, but we are not in a position to make that all stakeholders communicate properly with each other. Sometimes that is out of fear, anxiety, and a main point for us in Düsseldorf, the capital of North Rhine-Westphalia, one of the 16 federal states, is, for instance, the opening hours of the customs. And that is really hampering a lot of things. It sounds silly, but it is really the fact of life, and that is also counting for veterinarian and phyto services. And we are a warehouse handler, so we are not having anything to do at the ramp. That is given over to ramp handlers. And in our case too, and the communication between these parties is very thin. So that is a major part of improvement, which we work on, but it is a very, very difficult thing.
So let's go to Lothar. Lothar is the customer in many cases in different ways, and the user of airport services. Lothar, how do you see it from Schenker's point of view as to what are the things at the airport that slow you down?
Well, in my experience, it's information. Information and information. If the handler at an airport, be it on the export side or import side, if they don't know what workload is coming towards them, be it on the export side, if they don't know which shipments they have to take off my truck as I deliver to the terminal, they are lost in such that they can really start working only once they open the truck and offload it. On the import side, likewise, if they don't know what's on the aircraft arriving from China or wherever it's coming from, then they, again, stumble finding information somewhere in the system or on a piece of paper. And all this is slowing down the process time. But one other aspect also has to be mentioned. Sometimes it's purposely that a shipment is maybe staying for half a day at the airport on the import side. Because as a forwarder, my line of business is consolidation. So if I know that the shipment has arrived at the airport in the morning at 7 o'clock and another arrived at 8 o'clock, and I'm expecting another larger shipment to arrive at 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm not sending 3 trucks. I might wait until 11 o'clock until all 3 shipments are there, because otherwise my operation would be far too expensive, and the expenses would have to be borne by the customer of the forwarder in that respect. So it's a combination of anything, but the most important aspect, I believe, is the information exchange, timely ahead of the cargo.
So Ben, from your perspective, you know, you're working on a lot of the things
Yeah.
that Lothar just talked about, but what are some of the things you see, particularly at Schiphol, as some of the
Yeah, I
issues?
fully agree that information is key. But the other thing is the complexity of the industry. It's not all about speed, it's also about cost, it's about reliability, it's about temperature control, it's about dangerous goods, it's about security issues, and all of these are leading to a very complex mix in the day-to-day operations, which are hard to digitize, hard to automate, hard to plan. In particular, as all the parties in the chain have their own business perspective and their own bottom line issues they're dealing with. I mean, if you focus on just one type of cargo, like the integrators do, you can have a much faster product, overnight services across the globe or whatever. And we now see that the e-commerce world is trying to grab both. They want the speed of the integrators, but want to pay less than the general cargo user is paying for the capacity. And that makes it even harder to improve the cooperation in the supply chain and improve the processes. And makes it even more important to digitize and have all the information in advance before a shipment arrives, so you can do all the checking, compliance, customs, all those issues before a shipment arrives at the ground handler, whether it's coming from land side for export or out of the air, and also have a better view on the planning on the volumes that are coming to a ground handler, because often, as Lothar said, import shipments arrive in the morning. They're distributed throughout the day, and export is always leaving at the night and the end of the week. So we have huge peaks as well at the ground handlers, while the planes are moving 24/7. So that's also another issue. But I think indeed digitization, information is the key. So happy to fly into to Madrid to inform you about my vision on this.
So Eduardo, your side of things a little bit different because you're on a financial aspect of things.
Correct.
And you've been working a lot in the ocean side of the industry, and just in the last year or so have moved a lot of your product as to what you do in clearing cargo financially. What have you seen from this growth so far in the air industry, particularly in the you started in the U.S. and you have Pay Cargo Europe
Right.
as well now. So what do you see that have been some of the issues from your perspective going into this new world of air cargo?
I think what we've seen is when we came into the industry, we came in to solve issues on the maritime side, and we kept saying, well, this is obviously, having come from that background, this is a very backward industry when it comes to technology. Then we stepped into air and realized that
Not so backwards?
the challenges are the same and sometimes even more complex. From our view, not necessarily just from the financial side, I think there is a lack of acceptance of new technology and how that new technologies, which are out there today and are being used, I would say, by the Amazons of the world, how do we take that to cargo and not just B2C, but really B2B? And that is the major challenges we see moving forward.
So we've talked and we've gone around the subject, but a little bit about digitization and moving to artificial intelligence and virtual reality and all of these keywords, the Internet of Things. And every conference I go to, we talk more and more about this. But having listened yesterday in some of the presentations about this need and the challenges and looking at the ramp of the future, what are some of the things we need to look at technology-wise? Where do we need to go, whether it's in the technology side or in how that interfaces with the workforce? What would you say, Gerten, there's some of the challenges that you see?
There is, of course, a great need for novelties, innovation, but please bear in mind that it is all boiling down to a word we never are able to say, and it starts with an M or with a C. To my knowledge and to my point of view, we have the chance to buy and to purchase anything which makes the world a bit better. We all make ourselves our pearls. It is the airline, it is the ground handler, it is the ramp handler, it is the trucker, etc., etc. We all have a little pearl, but we refrain from making a necklace out of it. And I'm a board member for the Cool Chain Association, which is an organization which deals with perishable logistics and with pharma logistics. And because of the fact that the communication with all these stakeholders do not work, and it will flabbergast you, but on a yearly basis, still 13 million, mainly children, die because of the fact that pharmaceuticals do not arrive in the right shape at the destination. And when we talk to perishable logistics, and we are then not talking about e-commerce, but in perishable logistics, 1.3 billion tons of food is tossed in the trash because of the fact that we are not communicating in the proper way. Now, where do you start? That needs investments, IT systems. We are now in the process to purchase a new IT system, which has all the features which could enable a proper communication. But that costs money. Now, I said the word, sorry. And then...
And that's easy to get, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have, most probably we have the chain together, all stakeholders nicely communicate with each other. And then what are you doing in this digitalization process with transparency? Because if one of the stakeholders is making a mistake, do you chop its heads off? Or do you say, no, we have a problem and we go and we make it better? So we iterate and make the product better. That is absolutely a huge thing. And when we compare it in the Düsseldorf situation with the ramp handling people, 2 in total, and the communication which is missing there, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Then take a look on one of the things. I know you have a community system that you're working through and communication network. How has that helped on passing data on between different parties within the airport community? And where do you see things still need to go on this whole communication challenge?
Yeah, communication system, cargo communication systems such as Cargonaut at Schiphol, but others in the world as well. They make it easier to communicate, to send EDI messaging or XML messaging between parties, so that indeed does help. But as long as the systems of the individual players are still based upon the old legacy of shifting paperwork and checking things after the flight, administrative things, financial things. That's why pay cargo is an interesting development. Then you still run your information after the fact, and I think the key thing is to have all the information in advance of the event for proper compliance, for proper planning, but perhaps also for better finance. I mean, if you have a more transaction-based financial system where you deliver the goods and immediately it's deducted from your account, and the trucker is paid as soon as he's delivered to the ground handler, and all of that in a transaction-based, per shipment-based way, instead of a monthly invoice afterwards. With all the issues related to late payment and things like that. That may be a way to cover the cost and to recoup the cost of new information systems which are capable of doing just that, instead of all the old legacy we still carry on in this industry.
So Eduardo, one of the things you've had the challenge now, and I know we have worked with you guys, that has been all these legacy systems of different airlines and different systems, but this is really no different than what you probably found in the ocean side of things. How do you see it, looking at programming, because you're programming directly with companies, how's that worked, and what makes it easier for a company like you guys to go in and be able to work quicker with airlines and the forwarding community?
Well, I would say first, thank you to Ben, because basically this is what we're trying to do in the industry. if you look at our industry, especially Europe, to a lesser extent in Asia, not at all in the US, if it's a credit industry in which the settlements are done after the cargo's already moved. So from our side, what we're coming in with is a system where the settlement is done prior to the cargo being moved. The information is moving to the payers, the forwarders that are picking up the cargo, and prior to the actual cargo being picked up. So the settlement or the discrepancies are solved at that stage, not necessarily 30 days later or 60 days later or 90 days later. All I can say is that from our side, we view that flow of information and the ability to solve these issues before they become a problem where you're digging for information that's already past and gone, and the history and the story is behind you. You have it in front of you as you're moving the cargo. This is what we did in the maritime side. This is what we're doing in North America with CNS and now IATA worldwide. And it's a challenge because you have the legacy systems. More on the maritime side, every major steamship line took it upon themselves to build their own unique system on different platforms, different softwares. So the solution, as we see it, is moving forward, is really the API. I mean, that's what's going to solve it for the payer side, so we connect with the major payers and their financial systems, which many of them are also built internally, legacy. And then with the airlines the same. And that integration is the key to be able to integrate with these systems. And it takes a new dynamic software. Won't go into that part of it. It's pretty boring, at least from my side, from a business side. But basically the connection is what you're looking for. And that's what we've been able to do, is connect through the APIs with the payers and the vendors, including legacy systems. They won't go away.
So Lothar, you're a member of the board of Cargo IQ as a data quality aspect. How do we get more, this whole issue of transparency, whether the customer wants it, the actual buyer and the seller want to see where their cargo is. How does Cargo IQ help us to improve this process of sending information between the parties in the chain?
Well, Cargo IQ is not the organization helping to overcome technical challenges, but what we are very much focusing on is the quality of the data. It's in computer technology, the old system or the old principle, garbage in, garbage out, still prevails. And I have to admit, even in my own company, which is Schenker, we have an older IT system which allows the operator to enter NYC for New York Airport. Does not exist. It's either JFK or LGW or whatever in the world. So these are standards which need to be complied with. Otherwise, you have garbage out at the end of the day. That's where it starts from the operational point of view. And that's where Cargo IQ definitely is very much focusing on to enhance the data quality within the air cargo industry. And that's the basis. If we don't get that straight, then computer never can talk to computer. They always explode at one point of time.
And to any of you, I mean, I was on a workshop yesterday, and they were talking about the still the utilization of paperwork on aircraft handling. You're making sure and timing, the loading of the aircraft and unloading of the aircraft, and the whole processes is that as a ground handler, they get paid. Is there that number, and it's almost like a quality aspect of things? Are there anything like you see that in your measurement of your customers that actually measure things and toward your payment? Is that quality aspect built into those sort of things? And are they still on paper?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We still, I think, fly 11 747 freighters with paper through the air. And that is still the situation. We have clients who have, not all, but they have quality measurement systems. And if we do not adhere to a certain standard, we get not paid. So it's absolutely an issue that quality must be measured. The thing is, how and do you make a system which can also communicate, for instance, with other systems? Because the interfaces, I'm not an IT guy, but it is absolutely dodgy when we talk about connecting systems with each other. So, yeah, we have to do all to make it better. But the question is still, how? And I'm honest, I do not have the answer right now.
So Lothar, we were talking last night about messaging types. Real exciting talk here in the bar. But but we were talking about XML and CargoImp and all these messaging. And then we have all these new networks like Amazon and Google are coming out with their own type of messaging and trying to bring buyers there. How do you see the future of connectivity in these new formation of languages and how we're talking to each other? Because in the past we've been going to centers of translators and information, but it seems the people with the A's out there in the forefront, the Amazons and the Alibaba, and they're creating a whole new world. How do you see the aspect of of using that information that we're using of shipping of cargo in the future?
First of all, I should report back the longer the evening went, the easier it was to discuss these things.
And we solved the world peace.
No, but we have to keep one thing in mind. The Amazons, Googles, and so on, I don't take them as a challenge. They are leading the way to a new kind of communication. And the old way of I'm sending a message and the carrier is receiving it, hopefully, it's probably a thing of the past. What Ben has with Cargonaut in Amsterdam is certainly one way in the right direction to have these community systems. But from my understanding and my purpose, I'm representing a globally operating company, and if I have to log in and connect to, I don't know what the end stadium will be, let's say it's 153 different community systems, that does not solve my problems. Then we again have these pearls and the necklace effect. We certainly will go in the direction of what IATA is promoting now as one portal, or something similar when it's not coming from IATA, maybe from an outside source. But this kind of technology is, in my opinion, the way forward. Unfortunately, it's not available tomorrow, and I cannot, even next week, I cannot go into an IT store and buy it off the shelf. This is a development, and I guess as we walk along, more requirements coming into this one portal thing, which none of us really has thought about it. Payment, for example, in my opinion, is not part of the one project yet. Nevertheless, it has to be covered in one way or the other. Amazons and Alibabas and so on, they are having an integrated system. For them, it's much easier. We have to think along the transportation chain. There are so many stakeholders, and everyone has their job, they have their thing to do, but without them we also couldn't operate. So it's not a vicious circle, but it's a development circle where we, as an industry, just have to go through.
Any thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, I think Lothar is right. It's easier for an Amazon to start as an e-commerce shop, like it was much easier for DHL and the likes of DHL to start as a fast parcel delivery company, to stay fast or to stay integrated as Amazon is. It's not just about messaging through the community systems. It's not just about the data and the standards of the data themselves. I mean, IATA is doing a new project, the one record data model, where they clearly define all pieces of information that someone may need to ship something across the globe. It's also about real-time connecting these things. The old way of working is like sending a message and waiting for someone to reply. That's not going to work anymore. It has to be a real-time connection to a system which immediately checks whether someone is able to pay something or able to carry something or able to handle, whether customs is clearing the goods instantly. And if you don't have all these real-time response capabilities with all parties, it's not going to work as Amazon is working today, or Alibaba, or whatsoever.
One of the aspects we have going right now, and we have some challenges in air cargo, is the safety and security aspect of things. Lithium batteries being shipped on aircraft improperly, the shipment requirements now of governments requiring advanced cargo data of the shipper and consignee information. And so we have more challenges with acceptance of cargo, ensuring we're getting everything done, and governments are wanting more and more data in advance of it being boarded on the aircraft. So June 12th, if you're not aware, June 12th, the US law goes into final effect that all cargo going in the United States has to have data of the shipment before it is boarded and transported on the aircraft before its final destination of the United States. Canada, UK, EU, Japan, and others are now following suit. So this is putting a challenge of providing information further in advance and more transparency in some cases. What do you see the challenge? I mean, Lothar, you're involved with aviation security. What are you seeing as some of the challenges on that aspect of things? And do you see that's going to slow down cargo, or maybe it will go just the opposite?
In my opinion, the traditional forwarder, airline, and ground handler in between on either side business model is well prepared and covered for that. The real challenge comes into when private individuals somewhere in a small town and I'm not hitting on that, but just as an example, in a small town somewhere in deep China is sending a shipment, has sold a shipment on their online shop, and they are sending it via the postal service, via whomever, to another private person at destination. Very often these private individuals are not aware of legal requirements when it comes to aviation security, when it comes to dangerous goods, lithium battery, just for example. And that's an education cycle they have to go through in order to be in a fair environment, whereas from the manufacturer point of view, handing it over to forwarder, to the trucking company, these are all professionals who have years of experience. They have trained individuals. Again, IATA has been leading the way with dangerous goods regulation. We know what we have to pay attention to, but if we don't know who packed a certain package and it's somewhere in the system, I rather keep it behind and don't send it out instead of putting it on an aircraft and then hope that it will come out on the other side. And God forbid, but maybe my family is on the same aircraft in the, somewhere in the seat, and it would develop a problem. And that's what the industry has to deal with, definitely.
Jordan?
Yeah, screening. It's a puzzle for me because where we are located, it is close to the Dutch border. When we talk about the RAS system, which is common in France and in the Benelux, that means that the lorry is completely checked on molecules. The molecules are given to the dog, and then it's ready, which is not, they tried to start it in Germany as well, but the authorities do not accept it. And it's a wish from my side that screening, to my knowledge, is only 100% check when you screen the cargo at the airport where it is going to fly. Now, that is not the case. Lothar knows that very well, of course, in Germany. We are having a myriad of small truckers and small enterprises, companies who are doing the screening, and then it is all collected and then it is finally brought to the airport. On top of it, and that is something for the environment, we see that a lot of cargo is firstly towed to Amsterdam, is made secure, and then it comes back. Now, children are now standing in line every Friday for a better climate. Now, what do we do with all these CO2 emissions? I mean, it's weird. And as I said, it would, for me, be a case for the regulators, and that is not only a German case, but a European case in Brussels, that my wish would be to screen cargo at the place where you are going to uplift it.
Any challenges, Ben, you think Schiphol is going to have on
Well, because of the volumes we have, we developed a pretty efficient screening technology companies which indeed screen cargo that's just coming to Amsterdam to get screened. I wouldn't do it. It doesn't make sense to me. But if there's a huge difference in the cost of screening, perhaps it's feasible to do it. But it shouldn't be like that. On the other hand, we shouldn't think that screening is the solution for everything. We need this three-layered approach with which starts at the validation of companies who are reliable, who are professional, who are customs-wise, security-wise, safety-wise are doing a good job and perceive a low risk on their cargo. Then we have to have information on checking who's sending what to whom, and if there's any reliable parties in the whole chain. If they're all reliable, then perhaps the risk is much lower than if they're unknown, unexperienced, or from specific countries. And then the third layer is the actual technology screening, whether it's X-ray or dogs or combination of dogs or molecules or new technologies, MRI, CT scanning. There are a whole lot of things being developed. You can't do everything physically at an airport. That's not doable.
We only have just a couple minutes left, but I did want to talk about one thing, and that's about people. And we heard about the challenges on the ramp. We have the same challenges in ground handling facilities and the future of the workforce in air cargo. And we've talked about this at other conferences this year. But just an aspect, I have to keep it kind of short, but what are the kind of things that you see where the people of the future are going to be coming from, Gers?
In our place in Germany, the labor market is due to the very good economic activities. Is empty, so we have a problem to find the proper people. And to make it not that long, one of the issues is, and please don't think that I'm working for the union or something like that, but we have to pay these people a certain amount of money, which is not that much. And what we see is that these people cannot afford themselves affordable livings anymore in a city like Düsseldorf or the surroundings. So they have to commute 60, 70 kilometers one way to find affordable livings, and that is a major problem.
Eduardo, we were in Miami just a few weeks ago, and we had the provost for the Florida International University, and we talked about education. From your aspect and pay cargoes, what are you guys working with FIU, I know in particular?
So we partner with a local university, Florida International. I say local, it's the fourth largest university in the United States. And part of what we've done with them is to help create what is the Ryder Institute for Logistics. As an industry, we do not really focus and invest in the future, which is the students coming out of the universities and some that won't come out of the universities, but creating programs in the university that makes our industry exciting. It shows them that it's not just, I don't want to say moving paper, because from our side we want to get away from moving paper, but an input system or something of that nature. And for them to have a full grasp of what the industry is all about, not just their immediate function, we believe is significant. And that's why we've gone to partner with Florida International along with others to build a program that within a year can be done even through the internet online, which most of their students are heading in that direction, that basically gives the future entries into our industry a broader view of what the industry is all about, and hopefully keeps them in the industry, because I always say we've never been accused of paying the highest salaries, unfortunately. So that is the challenge.
So we're actually over time, but I just want to start with Ben. If you look 5 years from now, what will it look like? What will be the cargo of the future in a couple of sentences? I'll make that real hard for you.
Yeah, 5 years. When I started in this business 15 years ago, we talked about e-freight already in 2005 or even before that, and it took so long to reach a level where we are today, which is halfway or something. I hope we're done in 5 years on this digitization process, and that most of the paperwork will have been gone and replaced by innovative smart contract-like systems. I mean, if something happens, and the system should tell you what should happen next, and whoever is involved. But that probably perhaps a proof of concept of those systems in 5 years. That would be nice.
Lothar, what do you think? 5 years?
Well, our industry is very slow when it comes to adopting new technologies, etc. Two things always push us as an industry, which is either the customer demand or legislation. Take, for example, ACAS. You mentioned it before. With ACAS, Advanced Cargo Information, there's a computer talking to a computer. And this is according to a certain standard. And if we don't adhere to these standards, we are out of the USA business. Brazil is going one step further. They want to have XML technology, nothing else. XML, they are not going on cargo messaging standards anymore, in case that means something to you. It's a very old system. Even IATA has put it to rest already. Point is, when legislation becomes more demanding in respect of automated information exchange, then the industry will move forward in a much quicker pace, and I can't wait for this to happen.
So I want to wrap it up there, and we're out of time. I know you probably have more, and we could talk for a long time, but I want to, let's give the panel a hand. If I can just end one thing. The amateurs discuss tactics. The professionals discuss logistics. Napoleon Bonaparte. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael, thank you to you and all the panel for that very interesting discussion. I had a quick chat at my table with Joseph Seiden, and he mentioned that hearing what you said reminded him of what we said about ramp of the future, that what we maybe need is a warehouse of the future, and really apply, because a lot of the things you said echo what we've talked about on the ramp, about advanced information, digitization, linking up, connecting. It all seems to be very much in alignment, and so this has been a very, very good discussion. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
So, you want to just sit tight for a second? I'm going to talk for just a minute here, because we need to look at what else we're going to be doing today. Starting right after the break at 11 o'clock, we have workshop sessions, the smaller breakout sessions in Room Paris, Room Toulouse, and upstairs on the mezzanine in Makata. You need to refer to your pocket guide or the app, the networking tool, to find out exactly what topics are where and when. At noon, we have a special, one of our workshop luncheons that's on changing GSE and vehicle driver behavior to unlock latent profitability. Sponsored by RTITB Airside, and it's in the bond room, which is kind of on the corridor off to the side. For everybody else, we'll have lunch available in the exhibition room. Before 3 o'clock today, be sure that you vote in the Innovator competition. Now, tonight is a very special night because we do have the Gala IGHC event. It's sponsored by Qatar Airways, and it'll be off-site at the Quinta del Jarama. Now, to get there, there's a bus, and it will leave from the back of the hotel, which is right down here, and the buses leave at 7 o'clock, at 1900 hours. So you need to be on the bus at 1900 or risk getting left behind. It's a very special event. We'll have a seated dinner, and I think some very special entertainment. It is suggested that everyone is in business attire as opposed to casual, and you need to be sure and bring along your name badge. You need your name badge to get in and to be there at the event. So if I look ahead, though, to tomorrow morning, the organizers have very kindly made this a 10 a.m. start, which I think is a good idea after a big evening tonight. And if you're checking out tomorrow, there will be a place to store your luggage from 7 a.m. onwards in the Toulouse room. Just have to be sure and pick up your baggage before the room closes at 5 o'clock. So with that, that ends the morning session. That ends our plenary sessions for today. Please join us now for a coffee break in the exhibition area, sponsored by Celebi. Thank you.